Imagine standing at the very top of the world, 5 stars gleaming on your shoulders. In March 1945, Dwight D. Eisenhower was that man, the supreme Allied commander. He was the face of order, the architect of victory, and the voice of the free world. Yet behind the heavy doors of his headquarters, the atmosphere was thick with tension. While the papers painted him as an unshakable titan, the reality was far more fragile. It was a silent panic that only his inner circle could truly feel in their bones. He held the title, the official seals, and command over millions of young soldiers, but, history has a way of showing that a crown doesn't always buy you loyalty. Eisenhower was caught in a strange, almost cruel paradox many leaders eventually face. He was the alpha of the pack, the lion with the most impressive title on paper, yet the air in that command room no longer vibrated with his steady authority. The walls seemed to echo only with the distant, furious roars of other hungry men. 2 of his most legendary generals were locked in a fierce internal power struggle. It wasn't just a tactical disagreement, it was a personal war of massive, clashing egos. Patton and Montgomery were like tectonic plates shifting right under Ike's tired feet. The impetuous American and the methodical Brit ignored the nuances of the hierarchy. They were playing a dangerous game where the stakes were the map of Western history. Eisenhower watched it all, feeling his control slip away, like fine sand through fingers. The tension was thick enough to be sliced open with a sharp combat knife. Ike projected calm to the world, but the internal cracks were only growing wider. He knew that at any moment, one of them would do something truly irreversible. It was no longer a matter of if they would collide, but who would strike first. The delicate balance he spent years protecting was about to shatter into a million pieces. Something was brewing in the dark, a move so bold it would rewrite the game. British Field Marshal Montgomery loved the limelight almost as much as the victory. He was orchestrating what he called Operation Plunder, a massive televised spectacle. Imagine, if you will, 1,000,000 men, planes darkening the sky, and flawless logistical clockwork. It was a slow, meticulous march, designed to be admired by the history textbooks. For Monty, crossing the Rhine required a ceremony the world would never forget. Everything had to be perfect, with every soldier in place for the grand opening. However, on the other side of that strategic coin, George S. Patton was watching. To him, that giant plan was nothing but a slow, overpriced piece of theater. Patton saw the war through a lens of raw, brutal speed and pure, lethal essence. While Montgomery was busy polishing boots, Patton just wanted to cross the river. He didn't believe in status symbols or waiting for the perfect moment for a photo. For the American, real strength was arriving before the enemy even knew you were there. The rivalry between them wasn't just about who was the better field general, it was about who would be remembered as the hero who finally broke Germany's back. Patton felt Montgomery was being fed resources and unearned glory at his expense. He refused to accept the role of a mere extra in a rehearsed British stage play. The thought of standing still while his rival took the laurels consumed him from within. A flame of rebellion began to burn intensely in his restless, steel-blue eyes. He decided right then he wouldn't be a supporting actor in the theater being built. There was a sense of urgency that no one else in high command seemed to feel. If Eisenhower wasn't going to give him the glory, he'd take it with his bare hands. Without a word, Patton began to chart a path no one would dare to authorize. He looked for a spot on the map where absolute silence would be his greatest weapon. The plan was set, and the dead of night hit a surprise that would shock everyone. In the dead of night on March 22, 1945, the world changed in total silence. While Montgomery slept, Patton moved under a veil of absolute tactical secrecy. He chose Oppenheim, a tiny spot that no one was watching at that ungodly hour. There was no thunder of heavy artillery or paratroopers falling from the black sky. It was a ghost movement, executed with the terrifying precision of a hungry predator. The 5th Infantry Division slipped across the water as if they were nothing but shadows. Patton wasn't in some safe office reviewing maps or reading dry, cold reports. He was right there, feeling the damp chill of the Rhine on his own combat boots. By crossing that river on foot, he defied every bit of military logic of the era. While the official plan called for caution and months of logistical preparation, he proved that pure audacity is worth far more than 1,000 planning meetings. The Third Army was on the other side, before anyone even noticed they were gone. When he reached the far bank, he did something that would become eternal legend. In a gesture of pure defiance toward the bureaucracy, he urinated into the Rhine. It was his direct message to the staged performance of the high-ranking commands. In that moment, he buried the idea that war needed to be a polished spectacle. To him, the reality of combat was raw, fast, and completely without compromise. That symbolic act sealed a rift that could never, ever be truly mended again. The root of the rebellion was now exposed for anyone willing to see the naked truth. Patton didn't ask his superiors for permission, he handed them a finished victory. By doing so, he threw Eisenhower's delicate diplomatic plan straight into the trash. The fragility of the entire alliance stood naked before such a reckless, bold action. Ike didn't know it yet, but the balance of power had just imploded right there. The silence of the battlefield was about to be replaced by a very loud scream. While the official plan called for caution and months of logistical preparation, he proved that boldness is worth far more than 1,000 planning meetings. The Third Army was already on the other side before anyone even realized it was gone. Upon reaching the far bank, he did something that would become an eternal legend. In a gesture of pure contempt for bureaucracy, he urinated into the waters of the Rhine. It was his direct message to the staged authority of the high commands. Right there, he buried the idea that war needed to be a spectacle. To him, the reality of combat was raw, fast, and without any concessions. That symbolic act sealed a rupture that could never be repaired again. The root of rebellion was exposed for anyone willing to see the naked truth. Patton did not seek permission from his superiors, he sought a fait accompli. By doing so, he threw Eisenhower's diplomatic plan straight into the trash. The fragility of the coalition stood naked before such an impulsive action. Ike did not yet know it, but the balance of power had just imploded right there. The silence of the battlefield would soon be replaced by a great outcry. The news did not travel like an ordinary military report that morning. It arrived like a silent thunderclap inside the offices of SHAEF. When Patton's message was finally read, the air turned icy. He had not followed the script, and he wanted everyone to know what he had done. The words were clear. He was across, without outside assistance. Patton demanded that the world know the Third Army had prevailed. For Dwight D. Eisenhower, this was not a moment of pure joy. Instead of celebration, a heavy political resentment took hold. Ike realized that Patton's brilliance had just eclipsed everything else. The stage he had built for the British now stood empty. His star general had acted alone, chasing glory above all else. Victory felt bitter under the cold light of central headquarters. The chain of command seemed to be collapsing in real time. Eisenhower had promised a specific narrative to his allies. He needed Montgomery to lead in order to keep the coalition alive, but Patton's ego shattered that delicate glasshouse once and for all. Every headline now belonged to the rebel who broke the rules. The supreme commander felt the blow of a public relations disaster. Suddenly, the enemy was no longer just the retreating German army. For Eisenhower, the real battle had become internal and chaotic. He needed to control a story that was slipping through his fingers. The pride of entire nations was at stake in that tense moment. Strategic maps became secondary to the political storm. Deep down, a decision was taking shape. One that would change everything. March 28th arrived with a weight that history books tend to conceal. Eisenhower was trapped between a military triumph and a political debt. He felt an urgent need to fix the shadow Patton had cast. It was the exact moment when the fatal mistake began to take real form. Instead of pushing forward, he began to look at the map differently. The strategist's mind was now clouded by the diplomat's heart. The road to Berlin was open, vulnerable as never before. Any soldier could see that the heart of Germany was within reach. But Ike decided to rein in his most aggressive armored divisions. He concluded that glory had to be shared. Or, perhaps redistributed. It was not a tactical move, but a sacrifice on the altar of diplomacy. The military objective was suddenly replaced by a cold handshake. He ordered the armies to stop at the Elbe, a fixed line in the sand. Berlin and Prague were ready, but he chose to look away. The strategic value of central Germany was traded for internal calm. It was not peace with the enemy, but peace within his own command. Ike wanted to satisfy the alliance, even if the price was the future itself. He ignored the warnings that some chances do not knock twice. A new reality was being born there, one no one had truly invited. By choosing to be a politician, he ceased to be the great conquering master. The map of Europe would now be rewritten with pens, not bayonets. The consequences of that hesitation were already crossing the distant horizon. A new presence emerged where American boots refused to step. The stage was set for a tragedy that would chill the blood of the world. American troops stood on the roadside, staring at the horizon. They could see the glow of cities they were supposed to be taking. Berlin and Prague were right there, vulnerable, waiting for the final step. But the order from above spoke not of glory, but of waiting. The tanks were shut down, and the soldiers simply watched. It was a forced pause no warrior could truly understand. Patton sat in his jeep, his face red with contained fury. He shouted that they could have finished it all once and for all. To the old general, every idle minute was a betrayal of the army. He saw what politicians in air-conditioned rooms refused to see. A golden opportunity was being thrown away because of agreements. The rebel of Oppenheim felt destiny itself was being sabotaged, as if fate was slipping through their fingers. Eisenhower no longer acted like the hero who commanded D-Day. The aura of a field commander had been replaced by a bureaucrat's posture. He did not need to demand formal respect, he still wore the stars, but in the eyes of the men at the front, something essential had died. The leader who was supposed to take them to the heart of the enemy had stopped them. Ike chose stamps and paperwork over the sword and victory. While the Americans stood still, others pushed forward through the mud and the chaos. The Soviets filled the vacuum left by the order from the West. The final prize was being handed over on a silver platter of hesitation. There, in the tense silence of the Elbe River, the Iron Curtain was born. Europe would be divided by the fear of those who dared not cross the line. The price of that choice was about to be paid in perpetuity, echoing through generations. In the end, history does not remember only the bullets that were fired. It remembers the weight of the souls who hesitated at the final threshold. What happened between Eisenhower and Patton was not a tactical error. It was something far deeper, an error born within the soul itself. Looking back, we see a man who chose the safest path. He traded absolute victory for the security of an uncertain political deal. The world has never reserved genuine respect for leaders who hesitate. There is a brutal truth that the powerful try to ignore at all costs. Fate doesn't wait for those who need approval and constant smiles. Eisenhower tried to save diplomacy and ended up losing his greatness. He believed balancing egos was the key to maintaining order, but real glory belongs only to those who embrace the risk of being absolute. In trying to extinguish Montgomery's fire, he created an era of shadows. The Iron Curtain was not raised by Russian bricks and concrete alone. It was cemented by the doubt of a commander standing still on the Elbe's banks. Eisenhower's fatal mistake allowed the world to be split in two. Millions of lives would be shaped by that entirely unnecessary pause. The cost of not being ruthless began to be charged at that very moment. Life and war share a rule that is cruel and deeply silent. When you have a chance at the final blow, you must act without fear. Any second of doubt turns into decades of real regret and missed opportunity. Eisenhower carried the weight of that what-if for the rest of his life. He left us a lesson that still echoes on our skin today, a warning for all who hesitate. But there is something even deeper hidden beneath that famous decision. It is astonishing how a single choice made in a quiet room can cast a shadow over the world for more than 40 years. Eisenhower chose balance, but destiny seemed to demand Patton's fire. Looking at everything we've talked about today, I want your honest opinion. Do you think Eisenhower was a wise strategist trying to prevent an early Third World War, or was he simply a bureaucrat who shrank in the face of Patton's glory? If you were in his place, carrying the weight of an entire alliance on your shoulders, would you have allowed Patton to take Berlin, even if it cost your relationship with the British? Sometimes, mercy in politics is just the name we give to our inability to be ruthless. Leave your comment below. I really want to debate this historical what-if with you. And if you feel you discovered a truth today that few people know, don't let this connection end here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to always stay one step ahead, uncovering the secrets that shape our world. After all, history is written by the victors, but it is only truly understood by those who have the courage to look behind the scenes.